Media show rescue workers picking through bombed buildings as civilians look on. More than 500,000 people have now registered as displaced in Lebanon, according to the United Nations. The UK's involvement continues. RAF fighter jets took out 2 Iranian drones yesterday, one in Jordan and another in Bahrain. American B-1 bombers landed at RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire last night. And the Ministry of Defence has confirmed the ship, RFA Lyme Bay, which has medical facilities and can transport heavy equipment, is being prepared for potential deployment to the eastern Mediterranean. In Portsmouth, the warship HMS Dragon is priming to set sail in the next few days to bolster Britain's defence at its Cyprus base. Signs the conflict is creeping ever closer. Lauren Moss, BBC News.
Well, let's talk to our North America correspondent, Helena Humphrey, who's in Washington, and in Jerusalem, our Middle East correspondent is John Donaldson. Helena, to you, first of all, we heard from the Defence Secretary, no let-up, quite the opposite today, also talking about ultimate victory being the aim, but it is still unclear what that really means, isn't it?
Indeed it is, Matthew, and I think it's fair to say that those questions here in Washington over a timeline, over exactly the end game here from the US and what that looks like, those questions are continuing to grow louder. Instead, we continue to have that forceful rhetoric from the Defense Secretary saying that the US would unleash the most intense strike so far on Iran today. With regards to an end to this war, essentially what Pete Hegseth had said was that this is in the purview of the president. He said it is President Trump's hand who is on the throttle in how long this war can continue. But of course, we know that President Trump had said yesterday that while this war could wrap up pretty quickly, what he was looking for here was ultimate victory. And in terms of what an end game looks like, what an aftermath looks to all of this, President Trump said in a CBS interview yesterday that this is also about rebuilding a country. I think contrast that to comments that we had from Mr. Hegseth, where he had said that this is not about nation building. This is not 2003. This is not about endless wars, saying that that is something that President Trump had campaigned against. And indeed he had. And those question marks are growing exactly with regards to when the end to this war will come and what comes after.
Helena, thanks very much. Before we go to John Donaldson, I just want to play a clip because Israel's foreign minister has been talking to the media and declined to comment on how long Israel anticipates the war with Iran will actually go on for. Have a listen.
When you are in war, it's probably not the best thing to do to reveal your operational plans or timeline. We are not looking for an endless war, but it is very important for everyone who is looking around, seeing what Iran is doing. You had a demonstration. You saw this demonstration on December and January, what they are doing to their people. Now you can see what they are doing to all the countries around, not only Israel.
Well, let's go to John Donaldson. John, I'll get you to talk about what is happening in Beirut in a moment or two, but let's start with what we're hearing from the Israeli government. It's really interesting. Over the last couple of days, increasingly, we're beginning to see a sort of divergence of strategies. Israel continues to talk about regime change in Iran, whereas the US barely mentioned that anymore.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop you. I've just been interrupted by an alert telling us the sirens are going to go off any minute, so don't be surprised if you hear that in the next few minutes. But you're right, and I think as we're getting these signals coming from the White House and the Pentagon, which frankly have been pretty mixed over the last few days, they seem to be varying what they say by the day, if not by the hour. I think there is an acceptance in Iran that America might be about to say it's done enough. And I think the Israelis are very much saying, well, we're going to try to do as much as we can, as much damage as we can to Iran while this fight is still going on. At the same time, we've got the alerts have you just heard. There are still missiles coming from Iran, drones as well, but also from Hezbollah in the north. There were sirens going off in Jerusalem and particularly in northern Israel around Haifa and north of Tel Aviv just this afternoon. So the rockets and drones coming from Iran has certainly dried up, but it's not gone away.
And John, briefly, give us the latest from Beirut, because I think it's 500,000 people who've now been displaced.
Yep, and fresh evacuation orders from the IDF for the southern suburbs of Beirut today, which they've again been targeting, going after Hezbollah infrastructure, as they say, and also the entirety of southern Lebanon, also told to evacuate dozens and dozens of villages, those people heading north.
John Donaldson, there in Jerusalem, thanks very much for that. Now, as we were saying in the headlines, the world's biggest producer of crude oil has warned of catastrophic consequences if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked for an extended period of time. There's been widespread concern that as storage capacity within the Gulf fills up, production would have to be shut down and take some time to actually restart. Well, Donald Trump has vowed, in his words, to launch fire and fury against Iran if it seeks to block tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. But as this ship tracker shows, traffic has all but halted since the start of the war. Iran has threatened to attack vessels that try to pass through as long as US and Israeli strikes on Iran continue. Well, responding to the US president on social media, Iran's security chief has said the Strait of Hormuz will be a place of peace and prosperity or a place of defeat and suffering for warmongers. So let's bring in Tom Sharp, a former Royal Navy commander. Tom, welcome here to the program. So when Donald Trump says he wants to take control of the Strait, how big a challenge is that?
It's very big, and he has to wrestle it back because Iran has control. Even though they haven't done that much, comparatively compared to, say, the Houthis, they've struck probably a dozen or so times. They've issued warnings, but they haven't used much of their armory that they have, in their back pocket. So there's quite a lot to do to get this reopened, and quite a lot of threats to get rid of to do so.
Walk me through the variety of threats, the Iranian tactics that could be used.
The first point to note is that they've been practicing this and equipping for this since 1988, since their regular forces got beaten in Operation Praying Mantis. So they have specifically focused on very dispersed, very numerous, very small assets in three group areas. The first is the air threat. Now that's the missiles, the cruise missiles and the drones that we've seen across the conflict. They still have plenty of those on mobile launchers, and they need to be eradicated because as you go through the Straits of Hormuz, you end up very, very close to those. So your threat time is very short. Then there's the surface threat. Well over 2,500 fast attack craft and uncrewed surface vessels, all of which are configured to swarm and to overwhelm enemy defenses. And then there's the subsurface threat, which is the mini submarines, and the mine threat, which of course we sort of know about, but so far thankfully haven't seen. So all three, the air, the surface and the subsurface threat, need to be taken down to as close to zero as you possibly can, or you accept the risk of going in there earlier and seeing what happens.
And that, of course, takes a lot of planning, potentially contingency planning. One doesn't know if this was thought through before the war started, but the president started yesterday on Fox News saying that actually if those tanker crews had any guts, they would actually sail through the strait. Do you get the sense that, in a sense, the administration is making this up as they go along?
Yeah, this has been planned for 15 years. I was part of it back then in CENTCOM. So the contingency plans are there. The numbers are known. Intelligence agencies have wrapped them up. This is a disconnect between the military sense of risk here, and of course it's the military's job to provide political options, versus the political imperative to get things moving, because they will see the oil price, violently spiking up and down, and all the uncertainty that's creating, and the traders and their shippers going, if this goes on, you say 4 to 6 weeks to get this clear. Well, we can't politically. I can't sustain that. So you've got a tension there, and we'll see that play out over the next week, I suggest.
Tom, before you go, there was a long news conference yesterday, and the president was asked about the strike on that Iranian naval ship that had sailed away from India. I just want to get your thoughts on what the president said, but let me just play the clip first of all.
In fact, I got a little upset with our people. I said, what quality of ship? Excellent, sir. Top of the line. I said, why didn't we just capture the ship? We're going to use it. Why did we sink them? They said, it's more fun to sink them. I said, they like sinking them better. They say it's safer to sink them. I guess it's probably true.
Tom, there you had the president saying it's more fun to sink vessels. As a former Royal Navy commander, what did you make of that?
Well, it's in poor taste, isn't it? I studied that engagement pretty closely and took zero joy or pleasure from the sinking of that ship. But when I was the captain of a warship, you've got really one job, and it's to make sure that when that happens, it's to them, not you. So it's a mathematical process of engaging the enemy more closely. To then revel in the success of it afterwards or joke about capturing them. And I think this will be a legal case study for decades to come. The sinking of the Belgrano by HMS Conqueror in the Falklands still is. There are legal nuances both ways. So it will be studied, and I think to revel in the death of those sailors is pretty tasteless.
Tom Sharp, we will leave it there, but thank you for joining us on today's programme. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break. Welcome back to BBC News Now. President Trump and his administration have been criticised for offering mixed messages.
The energy crisis across the world, and the energy crisis.
ईरान ने कैसे इजराइल के डिफेंस सिस्टम पर